If I was starting at 30% body fat, this is exactly what I'd do. Not some extreme 1200 calorie crash diet, not 2 hours of cardio a day, and definitely not living off chicken, broccoli, and misery. Because the reality is most people who start around 30% body fat aren't giving up because fat loss is complicated. They fail because they make it way more complicated than it needs to be. They go all in for 2 weeks, feel like a hero, and then completely burn out. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact structure I'd use to drop 10 to 15% body fat whilst keeping my muscle, my sanity, and actually reach the end of the diet. Step 1 is setting a clear target. If you're sitting around 30% body fat, the first milestone unfortunately isn't getting shredded. It's just getting to around 15% body fat. That's leaner than the vast majority of people walking around, and realistic is where most guys can sit year round and actually look athletic and in shape. Now, the rate of loss I'd aim for is around 1% of body weight per week. So if you weigh 100 kilos, you're looking to lose about a kilo a week. Could you push faster? Maybe, but remember, the leaner you get, the harder things become. So we want something manageable. There's also no rule saying that you have to do this in one continuous stretch. You can diet for 10 to 12 weeks, take a break, stabilize, and then go again. Fat loss doesn't have to be a race. And if it was, then we'd at least want to reach the finish line and not get lost halfway. So once you've set the goal, the next question is the vehicle that gets you there. Because there are 2 ways to diet. You can go aggressively or you can go steady. Both work, but one is inherently more difficult than the other. Think of it like driving to a destination. You could drive a Ferrari at 100 miles an hour and get there quicker, but you're also far more likely to crash into a tree. Now, if you're a skilled driver, someone who's dieted before, understands hunger, understands the structure that you need, maybe you take that risk. Personally, I like to push people slightly more aggressively at the start of the diet when the motivation is highest and energy availability is still relatively high. But we also don't want to pull every lever immediately. So the first lever we pull is just food. Before we add cardio, before we start doing anything crazy, we simply create an energy deficit from diet alone. If you're newer to dieting, starting with something like a 300 to 500 calorie deficit is perfect. And at the same time, we want to establish a baseline level of activity, which for most people is around 8,000 steps per day. Now, here's the key point. You want to find a deficit where training performance stays high, because performance in the gym is the #1 priority during a fat loss phase. The moment you start losing muscle, you reduce the amount of energy your body burns, and suddenly fat loss becomes an uphill battle. So if your strength is falling off a cliff, your deficit is probably too aggressive. Now let's talk about the diet itself. 90% of your food should come from whole food sources. Plenty of micronutrients, plenty of fiber, foods that keep you full for extended periods of time. For macros, around 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and a baseline of roughly 50 grams of fat if you're a male, and then the remainder of your calories come from carbohydrates. And as those calories come down over time, those reductions usually come from carbs. Protein stays high to preserve muscle, and fat stay at a reasonable level to support hormone function. And one small trick here, avoid foods that are hyperpalatable. Those foods that are engineered to absolutely light up your taste buds. They usually make you hungrier, not fuller. Boring food is often your friend when dieting, and trust me, when you are hungry, they taste a lot better than usual anyway. And one more thing, avoid the classic cheat day mentality. If you want to eat off plan, you can absolutely do that, but do it with the understanding that it will probably slow your rate of fat loss and potentially extend the time you need to diet. Nothing is off limits, but remember, everything has a cost. Once food is in a place where you don't want to reduce it any further, that's when we introduce cardio. Start simple, something like 2 30-minute sessions per week, and then maybe 3 as the diet progresses. But keep this mostly in zone 2, low intensity, sustainable, and something you can recover from. The goal isn't really to destroy yourself. Personally, I tend to avoid things like the Stairmaster or long treadmill sessions once the diet gets deeper, just because these can absolutely wreck your knees and recovery. Something like a recumbent bike is often far easier to recover from. And finally, let's talk about training. When people diet, they often think they need to train more and switch up their training compared to their gaining phases, but in reality, the opposite is often true. 3 to 4 sessions per week is perfect, something like a full body or simple upper-lower split. Each muscle group only really needs 6 to 8 hard sets per week to maintain muscle, and remember, the goal during a fat loss phase isn't to leave the gym completely annihilated, it's just to stimulate the muscle enough to maintain it, and ideally maintain or even slightly improve your lifts. If your strength is holding steady whilst body weight is dropping, there's a very good chance you're losing fat, not muscle. And above all, the most important rule, make the routine sustainable. Don't be the hero that jumps straight into a 1500 calorie diet with tons of cardio thinking sheer willpower will carry you through, because I promise you, no matter how stubborn you think you are, eventually that fatigue will take over and you'll fall off the wagon. The people who get lean aren't the most hardcore, they're just the ones that build a system and then they can repeat it for weeks and months without burning out. And that's realistically how you go from 30% body fat to actually looking like someone who lifts. So if you're sitting around 30% body fat, that's the approach I'd take. Set a realistic target, create a manageable calorie deficit, keep protein high, keep training performance high, and only add cardio when you actually need it. And most importantly, build a routine you can repeat for weeks and months, not something you can barely survive for 10 days. And once you've actually lost the weight, the next challenge is keeping it off. And if you want to learn how to do that with my help, my one-to-one coaching application is linked in the description, as well as my free course that runs through exactly how you can implement this strategy into your own life and routine. Thanks for watching, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.